Hi, I'm Phoebe, and this is Innovate with Purpose, the Bridge for Billions podcast. In this series, we'll be looking at purpose-driven innovation and reimagining a new normal within the entrepreneurial ecosystem and beyond. Hello and welcome back to Innovate with Purpose. Now, there's a topic that's been getting quite a lot of attention, deserved attention recently, and that is the future of social impact careers. So we really wanted to make an episode to take a closer look at this. Today, we're going to be looking at how these careers might change in the coming years, valuable skills you'll need to build a career in social impact, discussing how to foster true system change, and the best places to stay informed on all things impact career related. To help us delve deeper into this, I'm speaking to Dr. Craig Zelizer, who is the CEO and founder of PCDN Global, a leading company in social impact careers which connects a global community of change makers to the tools, opportunities, and inspiration to build careers of impact and scale change. And I have to say, talking with Craig, it's been really impressive to learn more not only about PCDN, but his personal experience with social impact careers. And that's really where I want to start today. So Craig, first of all, welcome. And could you start by telling us a bit about your own career path in the social impact sector, the ups as well as the challenges?
Sure. I'm delighted to be here with the Innovate with Purpose podcast. Basically, as far back as I can remember, I've been interested in how to combine social change and business. And I did my first stock investment, obviously through my father, I think when I was 9 or 10 years old. And somehow we got a hot tip, and I think I put $100 into a company, it tripled. But then I realized it was actually a defense company. And even back then, I remember thinking, like, if I'm going to be interested in investing in business, I don't want to try to make a return on companies that are making the world worse. And throughout high school, I was involved in activism, the nuclear anti-war movement, anti-apartheid movement, social protests. And really what was, I'd say, the biggest change in my life is the undergraduate major I did at the University of Massachusetts was a hippie major, but was also an honors program. And we spent a lot of time protesting and taking over buildings and also learning about structural inequality, racism, and really that kind of transformed my knowledge of what are the unjust systems in the US and in the world, and what are innovative ways to try to address that. I did junior year abroad in Hungary right at the end of the Cold War, and spent time in Yugoslavia as the country was imploding. So that kind of dramatically impacted how I perceived the world. And I'll say, out of all of my higher education, the one class that has the biggest impact was at the University of Massachusetts. We had a career counselor who loved working with our program, since we were all somewhat troublemakers and agitators, but agitators for good. And she worked with us throughout the semester. It was actually a 3-credit course to look at how do you combine ethics, values, and making a living. And that really has shaped a lot of my career, that whole thing of how do you make a living and change the world. Another thing that greatly shaped my life was mentors. So I had a mentor who strongly encouraged me to apply for a Fulbright fellowship as I was getting near graduation. And I was fortunate to go back to Hungary for 2 years. I was supposed to be doing academic research, but some friends and I got bored of that, and we started a nonprofit, an organization. We're able to get funding to do conflict resolution work. If I had to say, there's 3 different themes in terms of my professional interest. One is the intersection of business and social change. The second is on conflict resolution and peace building. And the third is really thinking about how do you use finance as a force for good. And I worked for different international organizations, nonprofits. Some friends and I started our own nonprofit doing peace building work around the world. Did a master's at Central European University, then I did a PhD because I felt like I really didn't know enough and I wanted to improve my practice. And then after about 10 or 15 years in the nonprofit sector, I started to get really burnt out on the fundraising dance. And there was nobody to blame. There was no boss. We were our own boss. And I'm still involved with nonprofits. I'm not against them, but I really it was unsustainable. And then I got a job as a professor for 10 years at Georgetown, working and helping to grow a master's in conflict resolution. And again, during that time, I did a lot of research, but my favorite classes to teach were in business and conflict and business and social change. So what I would do is work with students to help them understand the role of the private sector in both generating conflict in the world, but also playing a positive role in building social resilience, achieving the SDGs and things like that. I forgot to say, but I'd always been interested in networks and connecting people. And so even pre-internet, I started like a newsletter connecting people, set up the Yahoo groups that connected thousands of people around social change opportunities. And eventually around 2011, PCN was just 100% volunteer. We made a little bit of money off Google ads. And then in 2011, we turned it into a social enterprise, which basically our mission was to connect the world of change makers to democratize access to information opportunity. Initially, it was just for the peace building and development fields, but we grew out of that. We call ourselves a slow up. So we're not scaling or failing. So, we're having slow, steady growth in terms of our impact. But I really wanted to spend all my time trying to build something that helped thousands of people around the world. And that's kind of, in PSTAN, we rebranded and launched a new platform about 6 months ago. And really, we are one of the world's best hubs where we curate amazing opportunities for social impact professionals and aspiring professionals and organizations from all around the world. And then we generate a lot of original content and with partners, all things social impact careers and like the innovation space.
Wow, what a diverse career you've had, from working or creating your own NGOs to working in academia and now social enterprise, PCDN. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And I'll just say one thing. This is not my idea, but there are some people who say it's good to change careers every 10 years or so. I'm not saying that's right for everybody, and I'm not planning on changing careers 100% again, but like there's something about switching sectors, or at least coming with a different perspective, that just makes learning so much more engaging and makes my brain hurt in a good way. And when I stay too much in one particular sector or type of employer, like I think there's a danger of getting more static or stagnant.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and actually something that perhaps we're going to see increasingly over the coming years, people changing careers more often and looking more for those learning opportunities. And on those lines, how do you see social impact careers changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
So this is, I think, a really key question. And I would say one, increasingly among millennials, Generation Z, and whatever the next generations will be, people are increasingly looking for careers of purpose and impact. So I'd say the whole notion of what a career is changing radically due to the fourth industrial revolution and just changing nature of economic and political inequality. And I think the idea that people are going to, if they go to university or graduate school, which doesn't necessarily have to happen, that they're going to pursue a career in one area. So whether it's management, marketing, entrepreneurship, or teaching, the idea that people are going to finish a set of credentials at some kind of institution and then have a 20 to 30 to 40-year career in the same institution or even in the same sector is going to be increasingly irrelevant for, not universally, because there'll still be some sectors like public sector, but the idea is you finish your education and you have a career is not going to exist for the large majority of people in the world. And that's both a really exciting thing, but it's also quite terrifying. And so first is the notion that people are not going to have a single career. They're going to have a set of jobs and work experiences across sectors and often across fields and different types of employers that they're going to flow in and out of. So one is like the mindset that training and learning in a career is not a single entity. People need to see it as, what is my next adventure and how does my previous skill set and experiences qualify me for where I'm going to go next? So I think a really kind of attitude of flexibility and adaptability are going to be key to anybody to thrive in the next generation of impact work. The second thing is that a lot of the jobs of the future, whether it's in social impact and building your own social enterprise or working as an entrepreneur or working for a multilateral or INGO, a lot of the jobs that are going to emerge in the next 10 years don't even exist. So that's one of the things that they're being created as we go along. So the iteration and the generation of new ideas and career tracks is going to expand exponentially. So we can't even foresee what are going to be the jobs of the future in some sectors. So, I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago that there would be jobs as a drone operator? I mean, I'm talking about drone operator for good, not using drones to kill people, but there's a whole industry now emerging of using drones and sensors and technology to help improve farming or agricultural output, or all sorts of things. So social media professional, I mean, social media didn't really exist until 10 or 15 years ago, and now there's a whole industry of social media professionals or community managers for online engagement, and data analysis. And so a lot of the careers that are emerging, they don't exist yet. The last thing is, I think one of the good things, I mean, COVID-19 is horrific of what's happening, around the world, and the social, economic, and human trauma it's causing and pain. But I think one of the good things, it's leading to a radical examination or re-examination in many sectors about what are we doing on this planet with our time, and how are we contributing to the social good. And obviously that's not happening in all countries, but with the social impact sector, I think there is going to be increased growth in people who are maybe got interesting jobs, but they're like, I can't make any more widgets. Like, these widgets are not contributing to good on the planet. So I think there's going to be a radical explosion in people seeking careers in this, and also the pathways to do this. So the idea that you need to necessarily do a graduate degree, or even an undergraduate degree. I mean, as a professor, I still think degrees are valuable, but there's going to be a switch from credentialing as a pathway to careers to kind of experience and skills. And that's happening a lot in the tech sector, where increasingly employers are saying, even some large corporations, that they're not requiring a 4-year degree. They might just say, we want to know your ability to solve problems and have technical skills and ability to learn. And in the social impact sector, unfortunately, a lot of employers still want to see an undergraduate and or graduate degree as a credential. But I think that's going to change to some degree, because it's going to be increasingly, what are the skills and the experience and knowledge you have to help solve the social problem. And that, not that credentials become irrelevant, but there's going to be diverse pathways to building careers.
Yeah, that's really great to get your opinion on that, actually, because I think COVID-19 has really opened up people's minds to impact and making a difference, which goes hand in hand with the idea of being flexible, adapting, even, being able to adapt and prepare for scenarios and careers that don't even exist yet, as you said. And if someone is interested in building a career in social impact, what are some of the key skills that they would need?
There's a really interesting report. There's a great organization in the US called RippleWorks, which was funded by one of the creators of the Ripple cryptocurrency, which the currency itself is a little bit controversial, but RippleWorks does a lot of work on social ventures. And it's almost like a McKinsey of helping social impact organizations advance. And so they did a great research project about probably 2 years ago on kind of the talent gap in the social impact space. And one of the things they found, what prevents social enterprises from scaling, and most people would assume it's money, like the lack of investment, that if you're bootstrapping and you can't get an investment, you need to hire the talent and build the tech capital. But what they really found is 3 main areas of deficits for talent in the social impact space. So one was really marketing and sales. And that sounds kind of like, why in the world would that be? But, for a social enterprise to scale, whether it's bootstrapping, has angel or venture funds or other type of, investment, they have to have a compelling way to reach their market. And so that ability to kind of market and tell the message about about the product that they're offering to the marketplace. So they found a huge talent deficit, particularly at skilled sales and marketing people. And I've had that conversation. I've been on a bunch of nonprofit boards, and right now I think I'm more on advisory boards, and I'm on an advisory board of a couple of other entities. One's a B corporation, and I won't get into too much detail, but I've had multiple conversations with the founder, and they're up to a couple of million in revenue. And one of the conversations we've had is that, one of his biggest challenges, yes, is building a great product, getting clients, but he's got a lot of inbound people coming to him. But that challenge of building up a talent pipeline and having people stay in his enterprise, and particularly one of the areas he's found the most challenge. I mean, one, it's hard to keep really good coders, but he's done okay at that. But that marketing and the outreach and the sales, he's really had a hard time finding people to stay in in that role. And it's so critical because as a founder, that person's wound up doing a lot of the sales and marketing, but he's got a team, I think, of 20 or 30, and he needs like dedicated salespeople. So I think one is ability for marketing sales. Two is fluency in communications. And what I mean by that is not just oral communications or written, but really the ability to tell compelling stories through diverse medium. That's a skill set that's going to be critically important in whatever job someone goes into in the next 5 or 10 years. And so for right now, one of the trends is data visualization, short video products, but who knows, in 5 or 10 years, it's going to be augmented in virtual reality. And so really learning how to tell stories across multiple platforms is a critical skill set that I think is growing. The third one that's quite important is thinking about how do you measure the impact of the work you're trying to do. And that is two components. So one is thinking about monitoring and evaluation. So if if your social enterprise or social venture is committed to saying, let's create more opportunity for youth, for the say in Medellin, for example, I have a colleague who's doing multiple things, but one of them is a coding school with underprivileged youth, I think about 18 to 22, to help them build careers in tech. So one of the challenges of all types of social ventures is how do you know the intervention or the product or the service you're offering is having a desired output, which is the short term. You have the inputs, let's do training towards a particular population, but how do you measure the output, which is the short term results, and particularly the larger systematic impact? That's something that's critically important for anybody trying to work in the social impact sector. And you don't necessarily have to be an expert in it, but really understanding how do you look at inputs, outputs, and impact. And then I've got a friend who heads talent for Ashoka, who came from LinkedIn. And one of the things that he says is the most critical skill set for anybody trying to work, in any enterprise, particularly skills for the future, is the ability to work across teams and networks. Because I think most of us have realized no one has all the answers or even many answers. And if we're going to try to address the world's greatest challenges, through social ventures and other forms, is we need to collaborate. And so it's that ability to effectively convene and coalesce networks and kind of troublemakers across diverse sectors and find innovative ways to share ideas, resources, and collaborate. And then, technology obviously is rapidly accelerating all of this. So, being at least aware and ideally conversant in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and just realizing how rapidly technology is going to impact, and already is impacting, many sectors and careers. So I don't necessarily think you have to become a coder, but people need to learn, like, how is technology and this kind of rapid exponential growth and the ability of computation to aid in social problems, like, how is that impacting, and what is the relevance to your business? And then the one other thing I forgot to mention is really knowledge and experience of finance, the basic understanding of numbers and budgets. So, is your cash flow, are you bringing in more money than not? Are you financially viable as an enterprise? And that's such a critical skill set, and I find that missing, again, not from people who are really strong in finance and the social impact world, but it's such a gap I've seen consistently across my interactions with professionals and students all over the world. And and then really understanding the new forms of finance, particularly innovative finance, to help achieve or at least get somewhat closer to the SDGs, because there's a huge financing gap that international development bilateral assistance is about 135 billion a year, but all estimates are we only have 10 years left to achieve the SDGs, and I'm 100% certain we will not. I wish we would, but the estimates are we need 2.5 to $3 trillion per year if we were going to achieve the SDGs. So understanding what's a social impact bond, what's impact investing, what's innovative finance, what are all the different mechanisms from bonds to loans, and just understanding the business of change is something I think for anyone who wants to work for and be engaged in social enterprises or social ventures, it's so important.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned some really interesting ideas there, especially the ability to be able to network and stay connected with people and take ideas from different people, and to be an expert in a given area, for example, marketing, tech, or finance, but still being able to understand the general picture of social impact in a given company or the sector as a whole. So the last thing I'd like to ask you is, if people are interested in getting involved in social impact or working in social impact, what are the key networks and places to stay informed?
So I think I would say there's three things. One, there's professional networks. So if you are aspiring to work in the sector you already are, is like finding the right professional network for you or your organization. So obviously B corporations I've already mentioned. So even if you don't aspire to become a B corporation, following and reading their content and what it means to be a B corporation is key. A place like Net Impact, which is a global network of professionals and aspiring professionals and students who are interested in business for social impact. I think, so finding the right, there's lots of networks. I mean, there's venture funds and, angel investing networks and SDG networks. So finding the right, the UN Global Compact. The second thing I would say, places like PCDN, I think curate some of the world's best opportunities in news, places like DevX, Next Billion. So they're kind of Alpha Impact, which is one of the best, Impact Alpha, which is one of the best for impact investing. So you'll find both original news sites and content platforms. And then the third thing I would say is really the power of, Twitter, Medium, and LinkedIn, those three platforms in general, all are amazing. You just have to find the right ways to engage and find the right people and organizations. Obviously Bridge for Billions and their network and the content and the podcast. And there's, the whole kind of accelerator incubator world. And there's not one central place to go for that, but there are networks that aggregate. And then the last thing I'll say is we're part of a great network, which I love, which is called the Conveners, which is a network of organizations that convene in the social impact space. And it's global. And there's really big players like a Skoll Foundation and Aspen Ande and smaller players like us, but it's like a network that's trying to say, how do we convene for change better? And a lot of the content's free. So those kind of networks that are trying to scale change. But then podcasts, I'd say, are key. And then also just there are some really good publications. Fast Company is probably one of my favorite, just that always has interesting content.
Thank you for sharing those networks and spaces with us, Craig. I myself am a huge Medium fan. I'm always trying to keep up with content on Medium, especially content related to social impact. I think it's a really useful resource and platform to do that. Well, that takes us to the end of today's episode. Craig, it's been a pleasure getting to know you and getting to know more about PCDN and everything it's doing to support entrepreneurs and everyone that's curious about developing a career in social impact. So thank you so much for coming in to share your knowledge and your expertise with us. For anyone that's listening that would like to know more about PCDN, you can find all of the information on our blog. And make sure you catch us next time for the next episode of Innovate with Purpose.